I am 86, and I still dream about the war. You know, at 86 you are no longer just a person. You are an archive, a kind of library of records where most of the shelves are crammed with junk no one needs, but there is one section wrapped in barbed wire that you enter every night, even if you promised yourself to keep the door locked. I have lived in the state of Georgia all my life, except for those 2 years that forever made me older than my own father before I even turned 21. When for 60 years in a row you wake up to the smell of damp earth and hot metal, even though outside the window the pines rustle peacefully in the suburbs of Savannah, you earn a certain right to speak about what the true price of peace is. People often think that time heals, but that is a lie invented by those who have never seen jungles swallow men. Time does not heal. It simply teaches you how to carry this weight in a way that does not make you limp too noticeably in front of your neighbors. I have seen thousands of boys, first there in Da Nang, and then here in veterans' hospitals where we grew old trying to shout over the television in the living room. My experience is not just numbers on a demobilization document. It is 40 years of working with people who are trying to piece themselves back together after the world shattered into fragments. I have seen families collapse in prosperous American houses with white fences because the man returned from war, but his soul remained somewhere in the Ia Drang Valley. The main thing I have understood over these decades, the greatest horror of war, is not that it takes lives, but that it does not let you go, even when you have won or simply survived. It becomes your background, your inner radio that never turns off. Here in the South, we know how to keep up appearances. We go to church every Sunday, greet the mailman, discuss the harvest or gas prices. But under the skin of each of us who went through that hell lives a thin, razor-sharp doubt. Do we have the right to be happy after everything we saw? I learned to feel that tension in the air even before a person opens his mouth. It is a special rhythm of the heart that falters every time somewhere far away a car door slams or a summer storm begins, so much like an artillery barrage. You know, over these decades in Georgia, I have seen hundreds like me. We all make the same mistakes, as if the same old punch card in our heads has been jammed at a certain moment. The very first and most terrifying pattern is the attempt to brick up the past in the basement of your own house, hoping that a concrete slab will hold the ghosts in. I have seen it countless times in Savannah, in Atlanta, in small towns like Macon, where the summer air is so thick with humidity you could cut it with a knife. A man returns from the jungle, buys an old Ford pickup, gets a Labrador, marries a pretty girl from the neighboring parish, and one morning decides, I will never mention it again. But war is not old junk you can haul off to the dump outside the city. It is radiation. It seeps through the walls of your silence, through the upholstery of the couch you sit on in the evenings. I remember Bill. We served together, watched helicopters drop fire onto green slopes, and then settled just 20 miles apart here among the pine forests. Bill was a master craftsman. He built decks that took his neighbor's breath away. But he never, do you hear, not once said the word Vietnam. Even when we gathered on Veterans Day and the air smelled of grilled barbecue and the gunpowder of holiday fireworks, he would just silently drink his beer, staring somewhere through the trees as if searching for the movement of a sniper there. His mistake was classic for our generation. He sincerely believed that if you do not give pain a name, it will disappear on its own, like morning fog over the Okefenokee swamps. The consequences caught up with him 20 years later, suddenly in the middle of an idyllic Sunday. The simple sound of a plate breaking in the kitchen triggered such an outburst of anger that he nearly smashed the whole house. Then came the painful separation from his wife, who never understood why her gentle husband suddenly became a stranger. He died in an empty house, surrounded by perfect furniture he had built himself, yet he never managed to build the simplest bridge to his own wife's heart. We often make this mistake, trying to be normal for the American South, where complaining is not done, where you are supposed to be a rock. But rocks, too, crumble into sand if there is emptiness inside them. The second pattern I see everywhere is a strange, almost pathological belief that happiness must be something grand in order to outweigh the mountain of corpses we saw when we were young. We wait for fanfare, for some cosmic forgiveness, for enormous joy that will bleach all the dark corners of memory in one sweep. And while we wait for that great explosion of light, we simply miss the life unfolding right beneath our feet. I have seen men who spent their entire lives chasing adrenaline's ghosts. They invested their last money in risky deals in Atlanta, rode motorcycles down the state highways at night, trying to feel again that sweet metallic taste on the tongue, the edge they were used to in the jungle. Only then did they feel alive. Only then did their hearts truly beat. As a result, they did not notice how azaleas bloomed in their gardens each spring, how the sun set beyond the horizon, painting the sky the color of ripe peach, how their children grew up becoming copies of themselves. They searched for thunder because they were used to it, and in the end became completely deaf to the whisper of everyday life. They searched for a big wow, ignoring the quiet thank you. The third mistake is survivor's guilt, which in our parts turns into a slow, viscous poison. Here in Georgia, there is a very strong code of honor. You must answer for your actions. You must be worthy. When you return to Savannah to your parents' home, and your best friend Johnny remains lying in the red mud near Hugh, you begin to subconsciously torture yourself for every breath, every piece of pie, every sip of cold water feels stolen. I watched old soldiers deny themselves the smallest joy for decades. They lived in a regime of cruel emotional economy, as if laughter were a direct betrayal of those who did not return. This leads a man to reach my 86 with nothing behind him but a long corridor of gray fog. They age much faster than civilians. Their bodies bend under the weight of invisible backpacks, and their eyes become like sun-scorched fields. Nothing grows there except rust from an unfulfilled duty to the dead. I often see them in checkout lines or on benches in Forsyth Park, people with prickly gazes who automatically push away any warmth. They sit on a bench, and around them is an invisible wall. It is not just old age grumbling, no. It is a deep, reinforced concrete conviction that they have no right to the sun because there was too much darkness. And that is the most terrifying pattern. To survive mortar fire at 20, only to voluntarily surrender into captivity to your own shadows at 80. Their fates become like abandoned cotton plantations. Once there was frantic energy here, but now everything is overgrown with weeds and wild vines through which sunlight simply can no longer break through to the ground. For me, everything changed the day I realized that my own kitchen had become like a solitary confinement cell. It was about 20 years ago. My Ellen, the woman who endured my night screams and my numbness for almost 40 years, simply placed a plate of hot corn porridge in front of me and sat down opposite. She was not crying, no. She just looked at me with her tired eyes, in which all the emptiness of my soul was reflected. And in that moment, I felt such a sharp loss, as I had not felt even under fire in the jungle. I was losing not a friend, not a platoon. I was losing the woman who was my only anchor in reality, and losing her while physically sitting beside her. I remember stepping out into the backyard, sitting on an old wooden chair, and for the first time in many years allowing myself to remember not just the war, but that specific morning near Da Nang, when my friend Sam and I exchanged photographs of our families. An hour later, Sam was gone. For 40 years, I carried his death inside me as a sentence. I punished myself for seeing the Georgia sun while he did not. But in that moment, watching the shadow of a large oak slowly creep across the grass, I suddenly became aware of the contrast. I saw veterans who never managed to leave that forest. They turned into stubborn monuments to their own pain. They attend meetings, wear old caps, and talk only about what happened back then. Their time has stopped. But there were others, not many, but they existed, those who learned to separate memory and life. I realized that happiness after horror is not a betrayal of the fallen. It is the only way to justify the fact that you remained alive. That contrast became my personal watershed. I began to notice how my fellow veterans grew quieter with each passing year. Whenever I learn of the death of another man from our regiment, I no longer feel that icy cold in my chest. I look at the sky, where the thick southern clouds drift, and I sincerely rejoice for them. I believe that there, in a better world, they have finally taken off their heavy boots, shaken the sand from their eyes, and no longer see flashes of napalm in their sleep. They are free, and this peace for them gives me the strength to rejoice in the small things here. I learned to appreciate the moment when a bird lands on the feeder, or when the first ray of sun touches my old hands. This is my happiness, quiet, unnoticeable, gathered crumb by crumb from the ashes of the past. I look at the new generation of boys in Savannah rushing about their business and feel an incredible distance of time. They live in a world where war is only lines in a textbook, and I pray it stays that way. My reflection now is not regret, but gratitude for the ability to feel this silence, even if it is sometimes interrupted by the echo of old explosions in my head. Here I sit on this old veranda, where the paint has long peeled from the hot Georgia sun, and watch as dusk slowly swallows the pines on the horizon. You know, at 86, you're no longer in a hurry anywhere. Your world narrows to the size of this rocking chair and a mug of strong tea in your hands, yet inside it becomes boundless. I look at my old fingers, twisted by arthritis, and see in them not weakness, but history. Every wrinkle is a mile traveled, every scar is a lesson I have finally learned. I often think about the boys with whom we once shared the last sip of water under the scorching jungle sun. Each year, our list grows shorter. Recently, old Harry from Albany passed away last month. Frank. Once, I would have cried or drunk from grief, but now I feel only deep, silent peace. I sincerely rejoice for them. I believe that where they have gone, the sky is always clear and the grass is soft and hides no traps. I believe they finally sleep without dreams, or at least see only themselves young and happy again, somewhere at a Saturday night dance in their hometown. I await the moment when I will join them, and I do so without a shadow of fear. It is not weariness of life, no, it is simply readiness to hand over the post to whoever comes next. My happiness now is completely quiet. It is in the smell of rain after a long drought, in the way a sunbeam jumps along the living room wall, in the fact that I can simply breathe this air without waiting for the command, "Take cover." If you seek meaning in great upheavals, you will not find it. Meaning is in the moment of silence you finally allowed yourself to deserve. We all pass through our personal fire, but what matters is not how badly you were burned, but what you managed to carry out of those flames in your cupped hands. Was all that life, with its pain and losses, worth a single peaceful minute at the end of the road? If this conversation resonated in your heart, like this story, it is pleasant for me to know that my voice was heard. And subscribe if you would like to sit with me a little longer on this veranda. We still have something to be silent about together.